Oh, this is just over the top. You see this landscape here? You think that's just natural? I'm going to tell you what that is. That's a feather. And so is this. And this is the cross-section of a feather. I got a couple of feathers here. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have to turn the lights back up. But you see this here? It's exactly the same as that right there. Now, let's turn the lights up. This is a feather. That's a turkey feather. But they were bigger than that. You see, that's one side. That's the other side. Why do you think that would be like that if it wasn't a feather? And I can show you where this came from. And there is tons of them there, and they're as thick as this. And this is a mountain that is also a feather. And I can tell you where it came from was a dragon. You see all of these? These are all feathers. These are all feathers. You see them? This is not just an accident. Well, I'll show you a little more over here, but this is the Caucasus. Now guess what? This relates to a map from Herodotus. Where do you see this map? This shows everything that I've been talking about, and it's all, he verified it back at 450 BC. Okay, I made a decision. This is such a deep, deep topic that I can't do this in one shot. I'm turning people off because I'm making them a little too long. This was where that feather came from, this gigantic feather. Hold on. This right here. And this feather is only the in-between of one of these right here, and it's only the very, very edge of the in-between of one strand. And one strand is almost nothing. And this is only the in-between right there on the edge of that one little strip. And that's the gluey part that glues the feathers together. These things are just gigantic. They have no clue. And I'm going to show you something about a fellow that's doing giants. And I tried contacting him. It's highly unlikely that anybody suspects that these things were these size. Although he is doing some fabulous research. And he has the, well, I'm going to show you in a second. My friends, my friends, my friends, I have something for you which you are not going to believe. Get everybody that you know, get them together, and start to examine this. This is a map from 450 BC, that's 2,500 years ago, by Herodotus, who was the father of history. And they attacked him so badly for telling the true history, they also called him the father of lies. Now, he wrote about Arabia, the Arabian area. Now, this is the Atlas Mountains. Look at this, Atlantis. There's where Atlantis was. I show this on I show it all the time. There's Atlantis. There's the Atlas Mountains. This is Spain. And this is the Mediterranean Sea, and so forth. This was pretty well understood at this particular time. And Herodotus claims, and they always say he claims this, he claims that. Well, he claims that he traveled all these areas, talked to all these people, gathered all this information, and reported on dragons, giants, flying serpents, and all that. So the other day I did a video on Herodotus, because I had dropped him off the page 10 years ago and started looking to everybody else. There's so many of them. And wait till you see what I ran across today. It is going to freaking blow your mind. It is mine already. I'm having a hard time containing it right at the moment. Now, what are we going to learn from this? Well, we're going to learn what our true history was. It's been stolen from us, literally stolen from us by academia. All right, this is the Caucasus. I'm just going to do real quick. Do you think this just accidentally happened by itself? Look at this. Look at the abrupt transitions. Look at this is feathers. These are feathers. All right, and this is the Caucasus. Now, where do you see Herodotus' map? All right, look at this. These things don't just accidentally happen. And these abrupt transition patterns, you see this? And where you see all the green running around it, that's body fluids running off of something was running through here. Now, apparently, Herodotus knew it was a dragon. You say, oh, Roger, how would he know it was a dragon over here in the Caucasus? This is just mountains. No, it isn't. It's dragons, because this is the Atlas Mountains, which is Typhon. You don't see them just running all over the place here. There's a lot of mountains. That's a dragon. This is a dragon. Guess what? That's Atlantis. It's right below the dragon. It's been there forever. And it's right on his map. This is from 450 BC. Nobody pays any attention to this old stuff. Yeah, it's just nonsense. They were just having a good time. And actually, to be honest with you, he was held on trial for making up stories when he was actually telling the truth. Even back in 450 BC, they put him on trial for being a liar. I'm not kidding. You know, I just noticed this one too. Haemus. That's in the ancient text. There's a giant dragon buried under Mount Haemus too. Or is Mount Haemus, one or the other. And that's what Ovid said. Ovid said in his Metamorphosis, his book called Metamorphosis, was one of the earliest books written at the turn of the millennium, just at the time of Julius Caesar. And he described all these events. And he said that the gods were real and they could morph from gigantic creatures down into little things and insects and planets and anything they wanted. They could do anything they wanted with their ethereal nature. They could turn little, they could turn big, and that's what happened. Was these gigantic creatures, whatever they were, ended up turning themselves into God-looking people, so they could come down and have sex with the women. That's what was written. I don't care what you say, that was what was written. And every culture had the same story, that the gods came down, they took over, and they were not pleasant to be around. And they were all looked like just like male models. They're huge, big, strong, tough-looking guys, and you know, or elegant-looking, the most beautiful of males, that type of thing. There was no slovenly-looking gods. They just didn't do that. They made themselves look attractive. And here's Atlantis. That's a dragon. Haemus, they said, was a dragon. That's what's in ancient text. We just saw the Caucasus. I don't care what you say. That's a dragon. And then over on the United States, we got dragons all over the place. There are dragons everywhere. He didn't know about all the other dragons. This is only 3 out of probably hundreds in that area. Sure enough, Herodotus knew what he was talking about. That is Haemus. That is some kind of another serpent. And if you come down here and look at it, and you understand how things run off, that's the body of the creature. That's why it's so nice and green and so forth, because it's living on some kind of feathery, this is feathers. Feathers grow things green as can be. And this is the runoff. You know, that just doesn't happen like that. That's not just an accidental occurrence. This is runoff of bodily tissues. And those bodily tissues were up in here in the body. And now they're all draining out. Now this is probably a stomach area or something that had a lot of degradable stuff coming out of it. Now I haven't had a chance to really look into this, but it appears that this is a very vibrant area out here. They're living where the thing sends all its poop out into the ocean. And that's where it's very fertile. You see this area coming down here? When you see these kind of abrupt transitions, that's indicative of some form of body tubing, basically. Let's go with that. And that is coming right out the end of the end where you'd expect it to come out of. Now, I'm sure I have been accused of being the father of all lies in this day and age. Well, I am not. I am the father of truth and history, and this is history, and this is the dragon right here that also has its run off. And there's the body of the dragon, runs right down here. Here's his scales. These are his throat scales. Do you see those scales running down, running down, running down, running down? Those are the scales that protected his throat, except for there was somebody that has a great and mighty sword and slashed that dragon's throat right there. And that dragon bled out into the desert. At that time, it must have had some water, apparently. And this is all from red blood, makes greenest green you can imagine, except for feathers. Feathers make even better green. I'll show you that in a second. Now, coming all the way down his head, all the way, just like Herodotus shows, all the way across North Africa. And on the other maps, they show it too. It ends up with his tail way out here. And these are feathers. These are some kind of feathers in his tail out here. You see it? They're like dragon feathers. But that's the end of the tip of his tail. It's all the way across North Africa, 100% across. Now, remember I told you he showed Atlantis? Here's Atlantis right here. He points it right out on his map, 450 BC. Nobody cares it was all these things that were recorded. They just glance over them like it never even happened. That is Atlantis. I've looked at this thing inside and out. It has all the boat docks. And even you can see even where there's probably even been buildings there. Now, this is the straits. You say, well, what straits? I don't see any straits. Well, look a little closer, my friend. What is this? That's a straits. Let it sink in for a minute. And this straits, at one time, protected the Sahara Ocean, and it was controlled by Atlantis. Atlantis was the richest of all rich people, and they controlled entrance into the Sahara Ocean via the straits. Nobody ever said the Straits of Gibraltar. They said there was a straits. It was just outside the straits, and that is just outside the straits. If you wanted to get into there, you had to pay these guys. Apparently, that's the way it sounded like to me. And when the whole thing collapsed, when this fish, which is a fish, was being attacked by this giant dragon, which is a dragon, Atlantis collapsed at the same time. I would say, all of the events happened at the same time. And all of this stuff ran out and created the Cape Verde Islands. That's why it's squared off in the front like that and swished around the edges. And this created what they call an alluvial plain. It's just a big flat plain out here of debris and sand and water. And actually, Plato said when Atlantis collapsed, so much mud ran within one day, they will never speak of mud again. I love the way these guys talked. Okay, this is to try to demonstrate this as best I can. That is the dragon. I showed you this feathers way over this end. This tail has all, and I'm going to erase what I put on here, and we're going to actually see bit by bit if I'm right or not. Now, I say this is the dragon. I say these are his legs. And if you read Apollodorus, write this down right now, Apollodorus 1.6. Look that up, Apollodorus 1.6, and you will read all about Typhon. He said he was so huge his head brushed the stars, and it would. Standing up, this thing would be more than twice as high as the space station. This is 1,000 miles long, more than that. He had viper coils. It is exactly what it says in Apollodorus. Read it, and there's no question. And it talks about the fight and everything, and about Mount Haemus and all of that stuff. Now, this is my claim. Typhon attacked the fish. I can see it now. I'm going to show you that happened. This is a fish. Now, let's start to take away bits and pieces of what I put in here. Now, let's start looking at the fish itself. You see, I say there's little scales here. You see those little scales? Now, I can't move this thing around because the black won't stay with it. All the highlights won't stay with it. Now, I say this was like down in his mouth area. This was his eye, and it comes up around here. His fin is up here. I'll show you in a second. The tail comes back here. There's a little fin underneath that they all have. Well, not all, but... And this comes right up. Now, this is where he was being attacked. And you see there's his fin. All right, so what do we have here? We have a fish. And there's his fin. This part right there was eaten into by this nasty, nasty stuff, which I will show you in a second, coming out of his dragon head. All of that stuff flowed down, and I got this far onto the fish. We're going to go deep in a second. This is the cut. And that's where he bled out in the desert. It's blood all over the place here. Show it to you in a minute. This is his body, absolutely enormous. And this is all the, and when you read Apollodorus, it says it's all flaily hair and feathers and everything all over. And his legs had the thighs of a human and coils of a viper. There's his thighs right there. They are basically the thighs of a human. This is the rest of his body. Runs all the way to the back. I showed you the feathers way back here. There's scales right here. Now, let's look down at the damage done to the fish by the dragon spitting that stuff out. So now we can dig in. So here we go. There's the damage. Whoops, holy smokes, I left some viper coils all over the place. You've got to get rid of those viper coils. All right, now, what do we have here? Well, we have damage to the tissue. That was the tissue, ran right down to there. This is the fish's back. I'm going to show you down there. You could actually see every blood vessel, artery. Look at that. It ate through the top level of flesh. This is not, that's not something you see every day in the woods. Look at it. And these, the black lines, are the veins. That's how the little bitty blood, when it gets to the end, it's by that time everything's sucked out of it and it goes back up to your heart and lungs. The red ones are the arteries coming down. You see it? They have the red blood in it. See, here's the red blood right here. And it's coming down to push these little blood particles into the cells that would be lining this whole area. And then they drain into these little, what looks to us like little ravines, but they are actually veins. And the veins pull that blood back. So, what are you looking at? Now, that's the back out again. There's his back. We just saw all kinds of tissue. This is being totally devastated by this nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. And let's go back to the source of nastiness, is his head. And here's his flaming red eye. As you read in Apollodorus, it's going to say he had a flaming red eye. There it is. And this stuff here is just horrifyingly nasty. You see that? Let that sink in for a second. This is what he spit at that fish. He didn't want to be that fish that day. Now, this is coming out of his beard. I never realized these beards, what the function of them was. They all have them. See the beard coming down, that little fuzzy looking thing? Same thing here. That's where all of this stuff came out of. Look, that's right where the source of that nastiness is. Take your time and look at that, and just think about that. That's coming out of that beard. All right, let's go take a look at the beards, because they all have, well, maybe not all, but all of the ones I've seen. All right, so let's back out of here. And look at this stuff. That's horrifying. Now, this is coming right from under his chin. You see it, the two beards? They were right here, and all of that stuff is run off. This is just all run off of bodily fluids, all of that stuff. His throat is right here. I've seen this so many times, it's hard for me to believe that people can't see it. That's the top of his throat. This is the back of his head, and all that floppy stuff is running all over his head. All these things are getting everywhere. This little flashy thing runs down the side of their necks. And you can see this in the parades in China and so forth, and all of the Oriental countries. They have this flashy looking thing running down their neck. This is all streamed away feathers and whatever they had. And these are all the scales, and this is actually the throat right here. That little tube right there was the throat. It runs all the way down. Whoops, I came out of the throat into the tissue. There's his throat. And right here, they said Zeus cut his throat with his great and mighty sword. And I'm going to tell you what, that is a cut. And they knew this in the ancient maps, even in 1375. Let me show you that one. Now don't forget, this is 450 BC. Here it is, Atlantis, right there. There's the eye of Atlantis. And there's Atlas Mountains, which is Typhon, Pillars of Hercules. Well, they talked about the straits, and the straits were right outside Atlantis, leading into the Sahara Ocean at one time. Now, all I can say is it's such a deep and very, very mysterious subject. However, I'm going to show you something else. They knew all of these things up until just recently. And then during the Age of Enlightenment, it was all flushed down the toilet. And you were told you were idiots if you believed this stuff. Well, I have the physical evidence to show you're not an idiot. All right, here's a little more refined map by Herodotus. As far as I'm concerned, that's a dragon. There it is, right there. The whole thing is a dragon. I showed you Mount Haemus. That's a dragon. I showed you the Caucasus. That's a dragon. There's one over here, apparently. I don't know. I didn't really. They're everywhere. They're literally everywhere. Now that's Hesiod. This is 800 BC. He wrote what the daughters of Zeus told him to write. They were called the Muses. And they were the daughters of history. And they came down to him as a sheep herder or something. He was up on Mount Helicon, I think it was. And they came to him and they said, oh, we want you to write some books. He says, I can't write. He said, oh yeah, you can write. And he wrote like a ton. Hesiod was the one that a lot of them based their research on, because he wrote all the history of mankind from Zeus on down. Extremely apropos. Okay, my friends, I am in seventh heaven. This is Jason Colavito, and he is doing classical, medieval, and modern fragments on giants. Well, we have more than fragments now. Now, he says this page will collect brief passages recording classical, medieval, and early modern authors' experience with so-called giants. And I'm hoping it will be today's experience, because I have the experience. It's a work in progress. I will be adding to it as time allows. And I hope, Jason, you will allow me to interface with you, my friend, and engage into this. Because the first thing that happened is Herodotus came up. Now, the reason I fell on this page was because somebody basically assaulted me. He said, oh, you're an idiot, you're a liar. Herodotus never said there was any giants. He didn't say anything like that. Well, yes, he did. He said all those things. I don't make statements that I don't have proof for. This is about Herodotus right here, 420 BC. And this guy did some work. I'm very impressed. He says he conjectured that there was a giant because he saw something that was 7 cubits in length, the coffin, and they dug it up and the bones were in there. So he says he came back to Sparta and declared the whole matter to the Lacedaemonians. They brought a charge against him on a fictitious pretext and drove him out into exile. That's what happens. So he goes back and gets the bones. They didn't care. He kept him in exile, I think. So that's what happens. The same thing happened to Velikovsky. He had all the evidence to prove the things that he was saying. And at the time, they actually made him take his book off the bookshelves, because the academics said they'd never buy any more books from the publisher. So they did take it off the bookshelf. Somebody else took it on, but that was later. But they tried to destroy him. They did everything they could to destroy him throughout his whole entire life until he died. And he was still never accepted. So anyway, I am going to change all that. I wrote a book about Velikovsky to say the guy was good. Now look at all this. This is fabulous. This is Herodotus. This is the Book of Wisdom by Sirach. This is 200 BC. These are things I've never seen before. And he's got a lot of stuff here. Pliny the Elder. I know a lot of these names, but boy, I'll tell you, he's got some serious, serious work on this. And I got some serious, serious work to do. Unspecified Arabic manuscript from Baalbek. After the deluge had flooded the whole earth. Anyway, all of this stuff, this all has to be taken into account now as possibly serious. I'm not saying every word's right. I never said that. And then because as time goes on, everything gets changed. But I have enough supporting evidence now in actual geological specimens and specimens of giants and everything else, all done, DNA tested, CAT scan, a whole 9 yards is done on my work is top shelf. There's nothing that exceeds what I have done on the actual material evidence of giants. Nobody's even close. So this is the guy I want to work with, so that we, but my stuff is so enormous, as you just saw, that people, the people just, they just freak out. And I've had freaked out people bashing against me for 12 years since I've originally discovered the giants. And, it's not an easy road to walk down, and everybody's saying you're an idiot. And now they're starting to come around. And thank God I found somebody like this. And this is under the Fair Use Act. I'm going to go through his evidence. He's got all kinds of stuff. He's got books. He's got all kinds of books and everything. So this is going to be fun. All right, stick with me. This is going to be a long endeavor. Because now I got a lot of evidence to go through. And I can show one way or the other. Like Herodotus. Can I show anything to prove the things he was saying are right? I absolutely can. He didn't have Google Earth. Plus, how would you like to go back to your Sparta and say there was dragons 1,000 miles long? They'd kill you. They would kill you. They exiled him for saying there was a giant. Just think of what they would do to him if he said the stuff I'm saying. He wouldn't last 5 minutes.